Nick Saban in these neutral site games. I've heard several different conversations about why Nick Saban plays them, and I've heard Alabama fans say how much they hate these neutral site games, James. And the question is, let me ask you your opinion first. What are your thoughts on neutral site games?
From a fan standpoint, I think it does kind of take away as far as that home and home possibility. It kind of decreases the value as far as the bang for your buck when it comes to especially the amount of money at a place like an Alabama or an Auburn that you pay for season tickets. But, I mean, from a realistic standpoint, though, from just seeing whether it's an Alabama or an Auburn or any school that's kind of close to the stratosphere of where Alabama is, the money that they do get, and money does have a lot to do with it. Remember, the money that they receive not only just funds the football program, it helps fund the rest of the athletic department for your gymnastics program, for your softball program. But, I mean, let's not also avoid this as well. It does help recruiting when it comes to getting your program exposure at places to where you want to get players, especially in states like Texas and metro areas like Atlanta and Dallas-Fort Worth, where we know there are a lot of quality blue-chip football players to be grabbed.
Yeah, and so the when you look at this neutral site game, first of all, I always hear the argument, well, it devalues your tickets because you don't get a home. Well, if the same reason Nick Saban says he does it is he gets paid every year. Okay, so Nick Saban gets paid this huge lump sum of money every year for 10 years. Is that more money than he would get every other year? Yes, that's one of the reasons he does it. Well, isn't it the same thing for the value of a ticket package? This year, for instance, you play USC in Tuscaloosa. You have a great home game. Next year, where's USC?
That'd be on the road, but
it would be out there.
Let's not forget that this year and the prior year, you know what home and home series was originally scheduled for Alabama?
Michigan State.
That's correct.
So how many people would be going up to East Lansing right now versus to Atlanta? I mean, you see what I'm saying? We say that, but the value of your ticket, it kind of changes from year to year, James. And so is it really as bad as everybody thinks it is? On the year that it's a home game, it really jacks up the value of your home package. But on the road game, that's a road game that you have to pay extra for, and you have to pay to get there, and it could be anywhere. Versus, pretty much right now it's going to be where? Atlanta or Dallas. So you plan it out, you kind of get that done. This home and home, it's a little tougher, I think, probably getting to USC to California.
Well, and you look at this as well from the athletic director's standpoint. You're looking at they schedule around a 7-game home model. So a home and home. Let's say if the Michigan State series wasn't canceled, you would be losing out on the revenue from having even a neutral site game like they are this year with Florida State. So, I guess in some ways for Alabama, Nick Saban and Greg Byrne are probably looking at it this way. You would be getting, let's say last year for Michigan State coming to Tuscaloosa, you'd be getting that revenue, but you'd be missing out this year. Where a neutral site game,
get paid every year.
You get the money both years.
Yep, and that's what I'm saying. So when it comes to building his program, everybody says Nick Saban. I don't think it's just Nick Saban. I think the university, the athletic department, the president, everybody wants this to happen. I think that the university wants it to happen partly because of the money. The athletic department wants it to happen because of the money, because you get the money to fund all of your other programs when you get these big, huge neutral site games. So that's number one. Number two is kind of recruiting / exposure, James. Nick Saban has turned Alabama into a national football program, but it's also turned it into a national university. So once again, when it comes to recruiting football players, like I said, when you say that this doesn't help recruiting, I mean, guys want to have national exposure. Okay, if we were playing Michigan State this year, yes, there would be conversation. But would there be as much conversation? The fact that Alabama plays, say next year, if we had a home and home with Duke next year, and I know everybody says, well, we should get a home and home with USC. Do you think USC wants to come play in Tuscaloosa? Let's get a home and home with Miami. Do you think Miami wants to come play here? Do you think Clemson wants to come play in Tuscaloosa? Do you think any of these teams, Wisconsin, Michigan, Clemson, USC, Florida State, they're not coming to Tuscaloosa, people. So you could have home and home, but your home and homes would be Alabama versus Houston. I mean, you would be giving up so much, and you wouldn't have the helmet game that you have. The other reason Nick Saban does it, like I said, for recruiting, because it's a national game and it's national exposure. The university wants it because it's national exposure, and they're recruiting students from all over the country. Then you also have, it drives this team to know that they got to play Florida State all off season. It drives and motivates them to have this caliber of opponent. We can say who we want to schedule, but the reality of it is, would you not rather have a lot more? Would you not rather have a lot more games against these quality opponents in a neutral site than to play? Because you'd end up with another game that's not much better than some of the soft games you talk about, because people aren't scheduling home and homes with Alabama as a whole. And that's part of the challenge. The other challenge is, think about this, James. What's going to happen someday? Who's going to retire? And if you're the athletic director, if you're the president, and you're hiring a coach to replace Nick Saban, do you want to have a bunch of home and home scheduled with USC and Ohio State and Clemson and all of these, and that's who you bring in the new coach to? Or would you rather have these neutral site games where that new coach gets a chance to have what? Exposure and recruiting and all of those things. There's a lot of other reasons, but I think those kind of highlight it. Future scheduling, it motivates your players during the offseason. It helps with recruiting and exposure for the university and for the football team. And, of course, it's all about the mighty, mighty dollars.